Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's MBTA Employee Roundtable webinar event. This event is presented to you by Transaction Associates and is part of our webinar series focused on transportation and commuting. My name is Karen Dumaine, and I'm the Director of Neponset Valley Transportation Management Association and Senior TMA Program Manager at Transaction Associates. I'll be moderating today's webinar along with Michelle Brooks, our Vice President. Our colleague Kelly Marsacci, Marketing and Design Specialist at Transaction, will be assisting as well. Just a little bit of a background on who we are. Transaction Associates is a full-service transportation consulting company based in Woburn. We operate regional transportation management associations known as TMAs. TMAs are organizations that are focused on transportation issues and provide services that are specific to their region. In addition, Transaction Associates also works with individual clients to manage their on-site transportation and commuting programs and to assist with compliance for the Department of Environmental Protection's rideshare regulation reporting. eCommuter.org is Transaction Associates' commuter tool that can be used to assist with finding carpool, vanpool, or bike partners, planning transit trips, utilizing park and ride facilities, and recording commuter cost savings. Qualified commuters using green commuting options for getting to work can register for the Emergency Ride Home program. Everything we do is centered around decreasing traffic congestion and improving air quality by reducing the number of people who drive alone. The other division of our company, Transaction Corporate Shuttles, operates shuttles, including first and last mile connections to transit, campus shuttles, fixed route services, community shuttles, and custom charters. Today, you'll be hearing from MBTA's Brendan Fogerty, the Deputy Director of Fare Products and Strategy, and Carmel Levy, Senior Manager of Sales Transformation. But before we get started, there are a few housekeeping items. We welcome your questions, so please use the chat box or the questions button on the sidebar of your screen. We will do our best to answer all of your questions during the webinar. This webinar will be recorded and you will receive a follow-up email with the link to the recording that we hope you will share with others or watch again at a later date. There will also be a short survey in the email that we hope you will complete. So let's get started. Take it away, Brendan.
Great, thanks so much for joining, folks. Just making sure, can everyone hear me? I often get double muted in these settings, so great, we are good to go. So thanks again for your time here. I know there's a lot of uncertainty right now around commuter transportation and around showing up in the office at all. So we are really happy to get in front of some employers and hear more about your individual stories and also sort of your collective preferences for the coming years. I'll get us started here with an outline. So by way of quick intro, I am the Deputy Director of Fare Strategy. I work a lot on how you pay, more so than what you pay. What you pay, the fare level doesn't change that often. So we're really interested in ways to deliver new services, make sure your commuter programs are as easy and effective as possible. So Carmel joining me is our Manager of Sales. So he is the main touch point for employers at the MBTA. And we will be sort of tag teaming it as we go through this presentation today. By way of sort of quick caveat, I know there is a lot of uncertainty about the public health environment right now. Carmel and I just really want to let everyone know in advance that we are not experts on this at the MBTA, and that the MBTA takes a lot of its marching orders from other state agencies that are charged with public health. So I know there might be some specific questions about that. I do want to emphasize, though, that we aren't really qualified to go far beyond what we've heard from the governor and sort of what the state of play is now at the T. Great, so right after this, we'll jump into COVID-related planning. We'll give you guys some updates on where the service is at because we've gone through a lot of changes over the last few months. We'll talk specifically about the T's COVID responses from a commuter transportation framework. So we took some specific steps around our fare programs and fare products that we'd like to talk about. And we also have some sort of COVID-related planning that's aimed at making sure people are getting to work safely. So finally, we'd really like to open it up to back to work discussions. Again, this is an opportunity for the T to really listen to employers and what you have in mind for getting back to work. So we want to leave a lot of time for that discussion as well. So I think before we dive into the slides here, we had a quick poll. Kelly, I think that could warm us up well for the discussion.
Absolutely. So we're just kind of curious, what transit pass programs does your organization participate in? So please check all that apply. MBTA perk, flexible spending accounts such as WageWorks or through NDRED, employees buy their fares on their own, or I don't know and you'd like to learn more about it. So we'll leave this poll open for about 30 seconds. We'll let you guys all get your submissions in. Again, check all that apply, and we'll go over the results here in about 5 to 10 seconds. Okay, looks like the votes are slowing down a bit. So we'll go ahead and close this poll. And here are our results. So it looks like 36% of you employees buy their own fares, but over half of you have an MBTA perk or a flexible spending account.
Great.
All right, back to you, Brendan.
Perfect, thank you guys. And I'll hand it to Carmel for these next few slides because he's worked with a lot of employers about some of these questions.
Yeah, thanks, Brendan. An interesting poll. It was almost even, sort of 25% the whole way through. So that's good to know who's on the call here. So let's start by situating ourselves within the reopening plan that the governor outlined in, I think, late April, early March. As Brendan said, this is where we get our marching orders. We operate within the guidelines that the governor has set. I think we're in phase 3 now, and that's sort of common knowledge. You should be all pretty familiar with this. My sense is that a lot of folks on the call are involved with planning back to work sort of operations for their organizations. So this is sort of the start, the thing that we've all started with. And so we're in phase 3. What does that mean for the MBTA? We can see on the next slide where we are right now. So the framework within which we're making decisions, and I should say this is not our area of expertise. We are delivering information that other people are experts on here. But we want to resume transit service ahead of demand and as staffing permits. We do deal with our own sort of staffing issues around bus operators or subway operators. They get sick too, they have to take care of families, stuff like that. So trying to, at this point, get to a point where we're essentially balancing, we're responsive to demands as they're trending, and try to get as close as we can to a sort of full service here. By mode, subways, normal weekday service, we're just there right now. Commuter rail and bus and the Silver Line, it's more heterogeneous. It's based on demand and it's based on what we can supply. But if you have specific questions, absolutely go to our website. That's where all the information is, and that URL down there, mbta.com/COVID-19 will get you sort of everything in terms of our response. It's the 4th most visited part of our website. And then that service section is going to have more information about current service levels. Mm-hmm. So that's the big picture. I want to talk about really our area of expertise right here, Brendan and I. And so to go into the Wayback Machine for context here, March 13th, I think it was Friday the 13th. Mm-hmm. I think the world, right, it's a little ominous, right? But basically, I think we all went to bed on Friday being a little apprehensive. And over the weekend was the 15th, and just the way the calendar worked out for us, that's when the orders for April cards for employers locked. So on Monday the 16th, we sort of woke up, and now we're in a pandemic, right? But orders had locked over the weekend for April passes. And that was really significant. It was just an accident of the calendar, but as it turns out, we had sort of $18 million worth of pass commitments from employers, because these are employers who are buying passes for their employees and then handing them to them, taking it out of the paycheck or just subsidizing it. So we had $18 million worth of commitments for April. And on the 16th, everybody woke up and we weren't sure if the demand was going to be there. So the most immediate thing that we needed to do was call the customers and see what they needed. I think at this point, the breakdown here is sort of old hat, right? Hospitality, huge reduction in commuting, lots of layoffs. Medical, they were still coming to work. And then there was this vast middle ground of people who were exploring at the time working from home, and it's now really become de rigueur. So these different buckets had different needs. I vividly remember a Monday morning phone call between Brendan and myself, where we essentially came up with our policy response over the phone. It went all the way up to the GM by Wednesday and back down to us, and we had a policy announcement on Thursday. And I say that sort of in that sort of very time-based fashion to emphasize really how responsive we were trying to be to the needs at the time. That was important to us. And everything since then has essentially been working off those initial responses from us. So the state right now, and this is true through August, is if you're buying passes for your employees and they get a pass every month because they ride commuter rail and it says the month of validity on it, you can send it back to us and we'll provide you credit on your account, essentially store credit. Riders who ride the subway or the bus, they keep their card from month to month, and so we had to basically invent a pause button for that. Because as I say, right, if you're working from home, you don't want to completely shut down your program. You want to pause it for a little bit until ridership resumes. And so that's the state we're in right now. Basically, if you can still buy passes for your employees, and if they don't get used, you can either return them or we'll provide you store credit for ones that aren't used. And again, that's in place through August, at which point we'll reassess. And yeah, I think that the point to emphasize here is that just the constant communication from us has gone really well based on our interactions with customers. At this point, we're in a steady state, right? We're working on other things. So one of the other things that we're working on is rider safety. And at this point, I think we want to show a video which says it better than I could. So take it with Kelly.
Welcome back, riders. Some things may have changed since the last time you rode on the T, so we wanted to let you know how you can ride safer in this new reality. Face coverings are required to be worn in stations, at stops, and while riding on the T. If possible, check with your employer to see if you can adjust your work schedule to travel at off-peak times. Please wear a face mask or cloth covering for the health and safety of your fellow riders. Maintain a safe distance from your fellow riders throughout your travels whenever possible. We're still here to help you if you need anything, including if you forgot your face covering or need hand sanitizer. When using the elevator, please limit yourselves to one party. When possible, maintain social distancing while waiting on platforms. Keep a safe distance from fellow riders when boarding or exiting a vehicle. Check your surroundings and give your fellow riders enough space while riding on the T. You're probably wondering what the MBTA is doing to protect riders and employees. In core stations, we're cleaning and disinfecting high-contact areas every 4 hours. And we're disinfecting vehicles every night, as well as performing midday cleanings of touch points to help keep you safe. We all need to do our part and ride safer. Learn more at mbta.com/ridesafer.
And then I'll go ahead and make you the presenter again, Brendan.
Great.
That's that movie, that video gets better every time I see it. It's actually, I've noticed a couple more things this time. One is that the thing that we're presenting now, this crowding data, is actually in the video. That's so cool. So a lot, huge initiative around safety and communicating safe behavior to riders. Here's another thing that we've all been working on, which is really important to us. It was an option. It was something that we were interested in before the pandemic, but at this point, it really has become a priority, and we finally launched it. This is crowding data on specific bus lines. Buses are really the workhorse of our system. It's where ridership has been most consistent, even through the pandemic. And so giving people data that they need about, how crowded is the bus that's coming is just incredibly important. Lets people make good decisions based on sort of what they're comfortable with. If they have a choice, right, they might wait for the next one. The other thing that I think is significant to say here is that this technology, right, it's on key bus routes, right? So where we have automatic people counters, and we've sort of done the data work to make sure that this is consistent and true, right? That's where so we've released it on key bus routes first, and we're also working on getting historical crowding data onto the website. So this is an ongoing initiative, super important, really exciting. Glad this is here. Moving on to the next slide.
Well, I think we have a poll question before we jump into some of the fair products discussion.
So fantastic.
To help us put our commuter hats on, I think we have our second poll question here.
So go ahead. What percentage of your employees do estimate working from home 3 or more days per week in August? So what employees are working from home 3 or more days a week? We have 25%, 0 to 25%, 26 to 50%, 51 to 75%. More than 75% will be at home, or I don't know. And again, we'll leave this open for about 30 seconds. We'll let everyone get their votes in. Okay, so got some votes coming in. Leave it open for about 5 more seconds. Let any last minute submissions come in. And okay. So it looks like about 30% of you are going to have more than 50, actually over 50% of you are going to have more than 50% at home. So we have 30% with 51 to 75% being at home, and then more than 75% being at home with 26% of the vote. That's a lot of percentages.
That's super helpful for us. So thank you, folks. I know there's a lot of uncertainty, and I think sharing this information helps other companies make decisions, and also helps us as an agency make decisions. So to really get down to brass tacks on what Carmel and I work on a weekly basis, we wanted to talk to you about some fair products and policy changes to help people get back to work. So these policies are in a pilot phase right now. That means they're not necessarily permanent, but we think they can help out for a variety of reasons. So starting out, the MBTA actually has crowding issues right now with certain lines from a public health standpoint. We actually can't get social distancing on the blue line and certain North Shore bus lines due to the commuting patterns that pre-existed. We have a lot of demand there. So what we've done is we've lowered our fares between Lynn and Boston. So a Zone 1A is the equivalent of a subway fare. So you can ride from Lynn to Boston on a subway fare on the commuter rail. So this is the sort of flexibility we're happy to have if it helps deliver people safely where they need to be. This is just a really common sense use of our existing infrastructure. So outside of sort of commuter rail zone shifting, we've looked at a completely new product for commuter rail. So as many folks know, commuter rail passes run quite expensive, $300. I think the average price might be something around $280, the average sales price for a monthly commuter rail pass. So recognizing that a lot of folks are not going to be in the office every day for some time, we developed what's called a 5-day flex pass. So this gives purchasers a set of 5 24-hour passes that are sold at a discount compared to buying a trip out and a trip back. So the discount is compared to 2 one-way tickets, and instead you get an unlimited 24-hour pass for 5 days. So these passes are valid for 30 days. If you end up needing more than 5, you can just buy another and stack them. So they are meant to be sort of a rolling product. A few caveats here. It's mobile only, so you can buy it through our M-Ticket app only. We did this because it's the most flexible point of sale we have. Our vendor can make changes very quickly. This is not something we can do for the core system. Subway gates, the fare vending machines just aren't that flexible. The technology is too old. And as a consequence, unfortunately, we can't offer this through the corporate pass or perk program. The limitations here are very real. I've worked with my tech team a lot on this, but we just aren't able to connect the point of sale application that many of you maintain to tens of thousands of mobile devices across the metro area. So that's just a point of a connection that doesn't exist right now. But we think this pass provides a ton of flexibility for folks going back 1-2 days a week. So it is a really, really reliable option that just didn't exist before. And folks have asked for a half-monthly pass. Going down that sort of rabbit hole, we found that some people meant 2 consecutive weeks, some people meant every other day, some people meant every other week. So rather than really go for every single permutation, we settled on a stackable 5-day. So that should be really helpful. When it comes to the bus and subway, as I said, the technology is just frankly much older. It's a 20-year sort of technology that we're trying to upgrade, and we will be upgrading in a few years. But for now, stored value is a really great option, as sort of old school as it is. And our 7-day pass for the subway is also really flexible, really affordable. It's about $22. So those sort of round out the flexibility we've been able to provide here. Aside from just new products, we're also expanding our outreach to employers. So Carmel, this is really his bread and butter, can speak to what's going on with our panel survey.
Yeah, this is honestly super fun for me. It's something that we actually do with our riders. We've had a rider panel survey going for, I think, years, and it's a source of a lot of feedback and data that we use to improve our services. It feeds into scheduling, but we've never really had, well, the direct feedback channel from employers has always been through Perk. And so if you don't buy passes directly from us, there isn't that direct connection. So this is something that we've set up. We're recruiting widely for it. We really want everybody to be able to participate. It's meant for a representative of a company. So like I said, we've got a feedback channel. If you're an avid rider, if you're a transit watcher, you're an advocate, we've got you. We've got those channels set up. God knows we hear from you on Twitter. But we definitely want to hear from people who are representing employers who are able to give us a sense of, you know, what your needs are. So the sign up for that panel is that link. This is going to be sent out afterwards. Yeah, I'm really excited about this initiative. I think it's going to be a really great tool for us, and honestly, an outlet for people's, you know, telling us what they need.
Mm-hmm. Great. Great, folks. And as Carmel said, we'll be sending this out afterwards, so some other people can join in. Before we really get to the topics of discussion for today, we have our third and final poll question to keep people thinking a little more broadly, a little more long-term about commuter habits for the coming months.
So, yep, we're going to go, what percentage of your employees do you estimate will be working from home 3 or more days a week in December? And we'll leave this open for about 30 seconds, let everyone get their votes in, kind of projecting into the future. How many of your employees do you estimate will be working from home 3 or more days a week? Okay, looks like the polls are slowing down a little bit. Get any last submissions? So it looks like in December, we have a little bit shifted, obviously, more people coming back to work in December than in August.
Great.
All right, back to you, Brendan.
Great, and these are meant to be really open topics for discussion. I think, you know, it would be really helpful to go sort of question by question here, and we can plan on taking some sort of open questions through the chat below. And so I'll go through each question, and then Kelly, you and I can collaborate on giving people the floor and hearing responses. So as sort of a beginning question, really two questions here, is do individual companies want to come out and share their return to work stories? Do you think your industry or office setup or your location affect plans? We've heard of a lot of differences between industry types, and we'd love for people to sound off on what their plan might be, whether they think they have enough certainty to really begin mapping out the next few months. We'd love to hear more from people. And I'm bad at this function too, but it sounds like the hand raising icon is the way to go here.
Yep, so people can either raise their hand in the small gray tab of the control panel. There's a hand icon. When you raise your hand, we can then unmute you and you can speak directly to the panel, or you can give your responses either in the chat or the questions tab there on the control panel as well. I think kind of as people are figuring out these things, we do have a couple questions. Wasn't sure if you guys wanted to do that while people are doing. Sure.
Yeah, let's take the first one while folks navigate the panels.
Sure. So we have, before the lockdown, I was riding the Orange Line on a daily basis. It seems to me that the period of decreased ridership during the lockdown would be a perfect time to put maintenance and repairs at the top of the to-do list. What kind of improvements can riders expect when they return to the office?
So that's a great question. We are in the middle of a really big capital improvement plan right now. I just moved from Brookline, but I used to be a daily C branch rider. So we have shut the C branch down entirely, right? We are running buses so we can make broad improvements. You can get the work done in 2 weeks that it might take you 6 months previously. So we've been able to accelerate repairs in certain areas, but I do want to say that running service at all on the Orange Line really keeps us from doing work because you have massive high voltages in place. Just because you've decreased the sort of number of trains running, you actually can't do work on that track until it's shut down completely. So it is a bit of a binary section there. I'm trying to think of other capital improvements. There's a lot of green line work going on, and we had a red line shut down on the south side that I'm not sure is something they would have accelerated without this sort of drop in ridership. So it's given us opportunities on commuter rail. I think they're doing a lot of, they call it, it's signal control. It's federally mandated safety improvements that will help trains run faster. So they've been able to accelerate those capital improvements. So some things have been moved up. I do want to say though, it is not necessarily a blank slate, just given the nature of our infrastructure to do repairs 24 hours. That's not something we're quite able to do. Carmel, does anything else come to mind?
No, I mean, it's a really good question, right? Because it's like, oh, well, you're running less service, right? We may as well get things done, right? To my understanding, that has happened. It just might not be in the spot where you're looking because it's a huge system. It's just an absolutely huge system. And we have a huge stack of work that we're trying to do. So it's a totally reasonable question. Yeah.
Other improvements that are coming down pike, I guess, are dedicated bus lanes. So some of the employers that have people coming from downtown or employers that might be based downtown, we are working with the city of Boston. I think the city of Boston has strong incentives right now to reconsider its own transit network because they own the streets, to give our buses right of way in more places to get people moving around faster.
Yeah, that's happening in Cambridge as well, in Kendall Square, right? So like I said earlier, buses are the workhorse of the fleet, and bus lanes just turn a bus into a limo with friends you haven't met yet. I mean, it really is. Bus lanes are the lowest hanging fruit when it comes to transit improvement, and they make a big difference.
Okay. So Brendan, we also have another question, Brendan and Carmel, we also have another question about the 5-day flex pass. We think it's a great idea, but I noticed that the pilot is running until September 30. Is there any chance it will be extended beyond that date?
So there's certainly a chance, and I mean, I personally think the pass has commercial viability. I think we've, we have long had our 7-day pass for the core system, which is actually a very popular product, because the truth is people don't need consistently the same level of access every day of the week. So this is really our attempt to give commuter rail riders a flexible product. There is no alternative to a monthly pass when it comes to discounted products. So this would be the only thing we have. The T has like a 10 ride option, but there's no discount on that option. You're just buying 10 single ride passes. So I personally think it has commercial viability. I hope it sticks around, but in the end, I don't know what our leadership is going to choose. It's out there now when ridership is low, and we'll see how things go over time.
I'd ask the questioner back, have they bought it? Have they bought it? Have they used it? What's their experience been? I don't know if they can tell us, but
Okay.
that's certainly my first thing comes to mind for me.
I've seen the data. There aren't terribly many of them because ridership is so low. But yeah, we'd love to get user feedback. These things can always be workshopped.
Very good. We have another question to please explain stored value option.
Of course. So stored value, the concept only exists right now on the subway and bus. So you're essentially arming the digital chip in your Charlie card with a stored value. It's like a purse. There are technically 2 different purses. We don't have to go into that, but you can put anything from $0 to $100 on the Charlie card. And with every tap, so you're essentially holding the money on the heart, on the plastic, and you're deducting from that purse with every tap. So if folks are only going to be using, for example, the orange line a few days a week or a few days a month, you can put $50 on that card and just draw it down over time. And stored value doesn't expire. Cards expire every several years. I think it actually might be 5 to 10 years. So stored value is a great solution. You're not going to, if you stop traveling, for example, you're not going to run out of that stored value. It's gonna continue to be valuable to riders. Unfortunately, our commuter rail system, sorry, just the bookend there is the commuter rail system is a trip-based system, so there's no stored value.
Okay, thank you. We also had a question about ferries. What are the changes for ferry service?
Yeah, so ferry service, my wife's family is on the South Shore, so I know how the ferry is really important to a lot of folks down there. It's the best commute we have, I think. The ferry service was actually completely stopped in the depths of the pandemic, which I know was a tough thing for people who still had to come to work. We've resumed ferry service, and it's still at a lower schedule. That website Carmel referenced will have sort of the most up-to-date news on it. We update service levels on a weekly basis. I don't know personally when ferry service is going to be increased, but we are back on, it's probably minimum weekend schedule, and we may be at a modified weekday, I'm not sure.
The Charlestown ferry is at full service right now. The other 2 are at reduced schedules.
Okay, great.
But shout out to the ferry. Come on, it's just like, it's a dream. It's great.
Okay. The next question is.
Go ahead, Karen. Sorry, I'm sorry. Good.
Go ahead, Michelle. Okay.
I was just, yep, go ahead, Karen. No, I'm muting. Go ahead.
So the next question is, someone has been told that the commuter rail has a 10-day ride pass, but then one of her employees said it was only for seniors. So can you confirm?
Yes, this is an interesting one. So the T does not have a 10-day product. We have a 10-ride product, which is really outdated. It's just an ability to buy 10 one-way trips all at once, which on the M-Ticket app, you can do any number of single ride tickets all at once. So it's kind of a holder for a bunch of trips. This particular question is probably about the perk program. So the reason that we sell 10 rides for seniors and folks with disabilities through perk is because there is no monthly pass product for seniors on commuter rail. So there is no zone 3 senior commuter rail product. It just hasn't existed at any point that I can recall or see from sort of the archaeology I've done with our tariff. So it exists to give folks who happen to be seniors an option for commuter transportation through perk on commuter rail, because perk is designed as a monthly pass sales channel. So that's why those 10 rides exist there. The 10 ride for full fare is now really only available through M-Ticket, along with the 5-day Flex Pass. And the 5-day Flex Pass, if you're looking to travel 5 days, the 5-day Flex Pass is designed to be cheaper than a 10 ride, because it'll get you those 5 trips out and back. So 10 trips total, but it is actually cheaper. So it's designed to be a superior product. And hopefully, I think it makes sense to retire the 10 ride over time. We'll see when we get there, but it's designed to be a superior product.
The question I was going to ask, and I don't know if we have any others that I just want to make sure we get to all of the questions that come in. And sort of this is a two-parter, one for Brenton and Carmel, and then if our audience wants to weigh in as well. If you're not comfortable asking the question, if you want to put comments into the chat area too, that's fine. I was just curious if you could talk a little bit about how you're getting information out to people who are part of the perk program. Where can people following this look? What's the best place for them to go to get updates or to connect with you guys? And then from the employer side, if people want to weigh in at the same time on that, I'm curious how you get information out to your employees. So once you're able to find out about things like the crowding or new passes, how are they sharing the information, which I think will help us figure out how best to get information to them.
It's a great question, Michelle. And I'll hand it right to Carmel, because he's the author on most of these things.
Yeah, so MailChimp is my best friend. And we've got, I think, around a list of like 2,000 people on our MailChimp list. In March and April, I think I was sending out 3 emails a week. And I was always worried that I was sending out too much, but every time I actually talked to someone over the phone, they were like, no, this is great, please, So a lot of really constant, consistent communication with the people that we have a direct relationship with, right? If you're getting passes through WageWorks, I'm telling WageWorks and then relying on WageWorks to tell you whatever I told them. So it's a little bit of telephone there. But yeah, I think the reason we set up the employer panel is to make that channel direct, even for people who aren't working directly with us, because you still have you still have needs, right? We still want to hear them. So right now it is mostly mass emails through MailChimp, and then some individual accounts that were with us and are no longer have good personal relationships there. But yeah, that's basically it. But I'd love to hear how people would want to get the information. We should shout out for the website here, right? We're putting everything on the website. The website seems great. mbta.com/COVID should be your first stop.
Okay, we also have a hand raised from the audience. I'll go ahead and unmute you, Melissa Z. Go ahead, you should be able to either unmute yourself or...
Can you hear me?
There we are, we can hear you, Melissa.
Great. I actually typed in my question as well, but I was wondering, I know that right now bus fares, you're not collecting bus fares on the majority of, or on all of the buses, and I'm wondering how long that will continue, and if there is a plan to start collecting bus fares again in the near future?
Yes, I'd be happy to take this. So I'm on my phone because I'm looking for the press release. We got a for immediate release today that we are going to be resuming front door boarding soon. Let me find it. I just want to get these dates right.
Right, so there's a little bit of inside baseball going on here, right? So just to explain, right, we've got buses have two doors, and if you board from the front, you pass very close to the operator. And so to protect the operators, we had everybody start boarding from the rear door during, essentially since March. And so Brendan's talking about changing that policy coming up.
Carmel, can you,
Are you looking for the date?
So it sounds like though that as soon as they resume boarding in the front of the bus, that they'll resume the fare collection. Is that?
Yeah, so, I actually don't think the date is public. But we are resuming, we will be resuming front door boarding. I think the main thing to keep in mind here is that the T never actually maintained the policy of not collecting fares. We just sort of operationally, we're not going to put people in front of a conductor, or in front of an operator during a public health crisis. So we are going to be resuming front door boarding soon. I don't think the date is public, just going through my email. But yeah, I want to be transparent with folks that this will be resuming fairly soon. And we see it more as a restoration of like an operating policy more than anything else.
Right.
We want to make sure operators are safe and feeling comfortable with our processes.
That makes sense. Okay, I had one other question too. I know you guys have been talking a lot about the buses and recording and reporting bus crowding. Is there any mechanism in place to measure crowding on, like, particularly I'm interested in the red line, and to, notify passengers of the ridership levels? And I'm just kind of curious in general, like if you have a sense of what percentage of regular commuters are back riding the red line, or if crowding's been any sort of issue at all on any of the other lines?
So our data on crowding for the subway is really sort of post hoc data. So we infer ridership based on the taps that we see. So we have basically a throughput metric from people swiping in, and we know how many trains are running. So it's a bit of a division exercise. So we actually don't have really good data on this train, this Braintree train, scheduled to depart at this time, is very crowded or not. So I think in past board presentations, we've talked about prevailing levels and done sensitivity analyses to see when social distancing might be violated. I actually don't have at my fingertips the updated data on what our capacity has been running at. I will say we have been, because we're charging people based on how many per link passes are actually used. We have good data on this now, and it's ticking up. So whereas 85% of link passes were left at home at a given month, we're trending up towards 25% of our programs link passes are being used, a little under 25. So ridership's returning, and a lot of that will be on the red line. It's our most popular line. Automated crowding data is just not technically possible because the sensor itself is not on the vehicle yet. Our new red line cars, when they all grace us, when they grace us all with their presence, they will actually allow us to make that sort of calculation in real time.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Melissa.
I actually just learned how automatic people counters work. It's two lasers, and they can tell which direction you're going in based on which one trips first. I think that's so cool.
So we also have a question from Scott. Any chance to move from a monthly based system to a 30-day product?
Rolling products. That's a really good question. That's sort of big, the sort of like big philosophy debate that we'd like to have at the T. So what I will say to that is on our existing fare collection system, we're not going to transition to rolling products because the system just won't sort of accommodate it. This is what happens when you're running a fare collection system on Windows XP. Strange but true. When we upgrade to our new fare collection system with the company Cubic, we have the contract signed and everything. We'll start really phasing this in, I believe, certain parts of 21 and 22. That's when we'll get more tariff flexibility. There are no plans on like day one to fundamentally overhaul our fare product structure, but we will at least have that technical capability and be able to have the public conversation around fare products. So we're kind of pinned in for now, but it's an interesting question for the future.
I think in the questions area, we have one comment and then a question, and then I think Kelly, we have a raised hand, so we'll do these two and then we'll move over to that one. Benjamin noted here to the question of communications that they're using some of the videos that you have on the COVID page, that they're embedding them in MailChimp communications and getting their staff reacclimated to transit. So that's great that they're able to use some of their resources, and I'm glad we're talking more today, but it sounds like, as you mentioned, that COVID page is being well utilized by people, and it's a good resource. Another question also from Benjamin is that you've committed to providing credits for unused monthly passes through August. Is there any thought about extending that?
So there's definitely a lot of thought. It's an active question on my desk for the next several business days. We are going to be working through financial analysis with our finance staff to make that call. Ultimately, there are a few $1 million at stake, and so we want to be careful about this, though we fully recognize that an 11th hour decision would cause a lot of confusion for customers. So we don't want to be doing that. We want to provide at least a whole month of notice. That's really our goal here.
Okay, so Sheila, it looks like you have your hand raised. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you so you can ask your question to the panel.
Hi, my name is Ann, and one of the things that comes up for us at my job is that a lot of people are concerned about the social distancing on the commuter rail, because in the past when you're on it, you know how the cars are set up, you sit in 3 in a row or 2 in a row, and if there's not a lot of ridership, a car or two can be shut down, so you're more crammed together. Now, I haven't been riding it because I've been working remote, so I'm not really sure if that's still happening. But are there any plans to make it so that it's not as crowded going forward? How do we get comfortable with that, going back to that?
Yep, that's a really good question. I think, as Carmel said at the beginning of the day, we're trying to run service ahead of demand. So we're not, as a public service, we are not in the business of wringing profit out of our assets. So we are trying to run more trains than we need. So ridership is actually very low at the commuter rail, and the trains. I live in Roslindale, and the train is coming by with full double-deck carts that are just empty. So I think we're going to continue that, and we're going to let the numbers sort of be on our side, because ridership is down 85, 90%, and we're still pulling the same number of cars as far as I know. What we can't do is actually add more cars than we had before. So we were, it seems like a decade ago, but we were actually running at absolute max capacity on many commuter rail lines, and we couldn't physically add cars. So we won't be able to add cars, but we are going to be running lots of service. So that's the main thing I would say. We also are not going to have T-Police sort of physically enforce social distancing. I know that's been it's been a hot topic in other transit agencies. It brings a lot of confrontation. So we've made the decision not to do that, but our information campaign and additional service provision are sort of our guard against crowding.
So you'll have cars running more than usual once the ridership starts to lift up a little bit?
Yeah, it's really like we're running almost close to full service now, and ridership is down 85%. So a lot of these cars happen to be very empty.
Empty,
And,
yeah.
and we're going to continue that sort of high service provision indefinitely, really, unless the governor asks us to stop.
I was on a car over the weekend. I was coming home. We biked out to Lynn. We took the commuter rail home. There were 3 people in my car. It was me, my wife, and another guy. Everybody was wearing masks. You know, there's a lot of room on the commuter rail right now.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Of course.
I think, but it's we keep coming back to the communication, but I think it comes back to just, as you mentioned, you're running lots of service, but ridership is down, and as those things get closer to meeting up, that's where it's really going to be about information. People making sure that they understand, where things are at and what's happening and what all the responses are, because it's such a changeable situation. We just want to make sure that people are staying on top of what's new and what's happening.
Great.
We have a couple other questions. I think we had some.
I do have a question. How many employers, I guess, and this is more of a question for the audience, how many employers are using a service like Transit Screen at their location to get word out about commuting information?
Maybe people can pop that in the chat if they are using it. I'd be just really curious about that.
Yeah.
Maybe for people who don't know what that is, maybe Brendan and Carmel, can you take a quick stab at, a Transit Screen type of service that, for real-time information, while we're still on communications?
I mean, our digital screens of the system, is that what you're referring to, Michelle? Okay.
Yeah, just the shared data between the MBTA and those types of real-time information that employers might want to consider if they don't have them.
It's the GTFS screens. So if you walk into, like, I know I walked into Partners the other day and they had one of these. CIC has them, right? So it's a screen, and we publish a data standard called the GTFS. It's like a data feed. We've got a whole team that works on it, and it has all the information that you would need to, and sort of the screens actually run an application that processes that into graphics that say, here's the schedule for the relevant routes for your location, kind of thing. So it's a pretty common service in what I'll call big fancy buildings, yeah, pretty well used, honestly.
Yep, it's the same, that same data that a building might pick up is the same data that goes into, say, the transit app. So the transit app is not the MBTA's app, it's a partner, and they use our public data. So the data standard, we're sending out structured data on where everything is. That is not a good like mass communications channel because we're sending out structured data on service. So we wouldn't be able to like send a video over that platform or that feed, I should say. But it's a really good way of seeing where data is. Where our services are at any given point in time.
Yeah, it looks like in the chat we've got a couple of big employers that that use the transit screens or something like it. Lobbies in most office buildings in Cambridge. They also use the transit app, which provides a lot of flexibility. The transit app is also being free, so I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about the app.
So yeah, the transit app Transit is a company. It's a startup that basically runs this sort of trip finding service in many major transit markets. And so they use publicly available data, which transit agencies like ours gives off as a public service. We tend not to be the best app developers, but we can be really good enablers of good apps. So Transit is sort of our official partner in that we actually signed papers with them. There's a few other options in the area, but it's a great way to see what bus is coming, when it's coming, and generally what the service level is on our commuter rail and subway.
And it also has our crowding data, since that is part of the structured data that we send out. So they process that in the same way that sort of our website does or that Google Maps would.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions? Doesn't appear to be that way.
Yeah, no, I think we've had a great discussion. I think we've covered a lot of different things, and we'll definitely have the contact information and ways to reach out to the MBTA and us in the follow-up email that you guys are going to get. So if as questions come up, later after this discussion.
Yeah, please. I think we should preference calling me if you want to talk to one of us. That's that. And then the other thing is the employer panel. I would ask that anyone who is an audience member here either sign up or share that internally at your organization so that we can really establish that feedback channel.
And we actually do have one quick question, if we want to sneak this in there. If we wanted MBTA staff to speak about safety concerns to our staff, where would be a good mechanism for that?
Do you mean like give public health information to staff?
Maybe we can get some clarification. There we go. Thanks for raising your hand, Benjamin.
Yeah.
You should be able to unmute yourself now. There you go.
Hey, Carmel and Brendan, it's Ben over at Harvard. How you guys doing?
Hey, Ben.
Good.
So I guess I'm thinking, like, wouldn't it be cool if there were, like, we have a huge amount of our population that is concerned about returning via transit. So we don't want everyone driving to work. We don't have the capacity to have everyone drive to work. And obviously from a sustainability perspective, we don't want and we can't have everyone driving back. So would there be some sort of a mechanism that we could provide? We could host a Zoom session, host some sort of a forum for MBTA staff to basically reiterate, all those great videos that the COVID-19 site has on it, but then also answer any specific questions related to, commuter safety and concerns. Does the MBTA have the bandwidth and or the interest in doing something like that?
Yeah, I appreciate that, Ben, and I think, we will put this through our customer experience department to see, and they were the ones that produced the video, to see what they think is the best way of getting this information out there. I do want to be honest in that, our safety department has been in the news. We're really trying to staff up. I don't know if they're in a place where they will have free safety staff to address employers. But I think our customer experience department, as sort of the message keeper on the public health news, can figure out what the best way is to address that desire. So Carmel and I will reach out to a lead after this, and we'll see how we can get that going.
Thank you, guys.
Of course, yeah. We are staffing up safety very actively. One of the only departments that it gets preferential treatment, in a shrinking budgetary environment. So it's a serious thing, and I just don't know where their staffing position is right now.
Yeah, to be clear, I think it's a good idea, right? We just got to see if we can sell it and make sure we can staff it. That's I like it.
I do too. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining today's MBTA Employee Roundtable webinar event. I think this was a great discussion for everyone. We appreciate it. Again, I'm Karen Demain, and if you have any questions about Transaction Associates or the services we provide, you can reach me at kdemain@transactionassociates.com. Please look for our follow-up email with the link to the recording of today's event, and on July 23rd at noon, we'll be hosting a webinar for commuters that use or are interested in using any of the MBTA services. Any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out, and I'll be happy to pass them on to Carmel and Brendan. And again, thanks. Have a great day.
Thank you, guys.